All right, I think we're recording. So everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Graham and Jordan podcast. First episode was about getting equity out of your house for you to buy your next house without selling your current one. This one, we're going to be talking about, okay, once we're under contract, what does that even mean? Because there's a lot of people that have never been under contract before, or they're under contract once every 5 to 10 years. They just need a refresher. So here's just how we get from under contract to that closing table during this. So I'll be obviously talking on the real estate agent side of things, to where Graham's going to take over whenever it comes to any type of lending that he wants to say. So thanks for being with us again, Graham.
Of course, happy to be here. And we didn't coordinate, but tan shirt guys, neutrals, very in right now.
Yes, yes. So just to get us started off, we find the house, we're under contract. The buyer has contingencies. I'm going about this as just a standard, we're not waiving any contingencies type of thing, and what that looks like. So the first thing, once we're under contract, is the earnest money deposit. Usually the earnest money deposit is 1% of the sale price. So if you're at $600K on the sale price, we're looking at $6,000 earnest money to be deposited for the transaction. The earnest money is essentially just like, hey, I'm a serious buyer. We're not looking to mess around, to where as long as we're within our contingencies, and for example, if we don't figure out with the seller any type of repairs or anything like that, or we can't negotiate correctly, we can get a release from contract and get that earnest money back. It is, though, in the state of Ohio, seller and buyer do have to sign off on the release of the earnest money. So even if we're within the contingencies and the seller wants to be difficult, they don't have to technically sign off on the earnest money, but you would get the earnest money back within the next 2 years or so. I'm not exactly sure on the process of that. I've had that only happen a couple times. Usually it's pretty easy to get a release from contract. So the first thing is the earnest money deposit within the first usually 3 to 5 days of under contract. And then the next thing, and then the inspection period starts right after being under contract as well. So inspection period is usually 7 to 10 days. We have to get all of our inspections in: sewer, general inspection, roofer, any type of plumbing, radon testing. So any type of inspections need to be done within the time frame. And it's not just the inspections. We have to get the defect notice. Any type of issues that we want the seller to resolve or repair need to be in the seller's hand before the deadline, midnight of the deadline day. So during that time, there's also the intent to proceed, to where this is the lending side of things. So I'll let Graham talk more on this, to where I usually put intent to proceed within 4 to 7 days after contract acceptance. And that's essentially you going ahead with your lender. So Graham, take that.
Cool. Yeah, so to this point, before you're being in contract, I'll quickly go over like what the pre-approval looks like. So you get a credit check, you get the documents to me or any other fantastic lender in town. And then they'll issue a pre-approval, and then hopefully they're like around on weekends and nights when you're going to see the places. If you put an offer in, a good lender should always be sending a property specific pre-approval letter. Just shows the seller that everybody's on the same page, communicating well. And then they can run the payments for you, so you know what you're getting into before you're in contract. So that's what the pre-approval looks like. Once you're in contract, like Jordan said, he'll have all the contingencies set up. He writes the contract really in a strong way, so you're protected basically if anything goes wrong. But from there, I'll get the contract from Jordan. And then depending on your closing date, if you are closing in like pretty standard, like 30 days, we can close loans in like 2 weeks sometimes if it helps be more competitive. You lock your interest rate. We would go over interest rate options at that point. You can look at buying the rate down potentially. If you have a seller credit negotiated, you can use that money to buy the rate down as well permanently. So we get all the options together. Once you're like, hey, this is kind of what we want to go with. We would I would send you an e-disclosure package to e-sign. In that package is the intent to proceed. So at this point, you're not signing for the loan fully. That's at the end when you sign in pen at closing. But basically, we would get everything going, and that's when your formal loan application / intent to proceed gets filed. That's a step everybody's looking for to move ahead. So it's like, hey, this is what we talked about terms wise. There's a big disclosure package, equal credit opportunity disclosures, those kind of things. Once we have that back and your updated pay stubs, that kind of thing, we will submit submit to processing and underwriting. And then in that case, they will give us the conditional loan approval from underwriting. So at that point, they'll ask for, homeowners insurance to be set up or
This
landlord
is towards
insurance.
closing now, right? You're going towards closing with.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My brain gets all
Brother,
fired up about lending stuff. I get excited. So
no,
I'll
no,
let
no.
you take
That
back
was all
over.
great. So the intent to proceed. I just have a question on it as well.
Yeah.
Do you, with the intent to proceed, you say you're conventional. Are you able to switch to FHA later on or anything like that, or does that get
Yeah,
tricky to where it needs to extend the closing?
yeah, that it all depends, right? So if you write an offer conventional, that's usually more appealing to sellers than an FHA offer. FHA, if you have peeling paint or like handrails down basements, that kind of thing, they're a little stricter on appraisals. So that would be a conversation that we would have to clear with Jordan, clear with the listing agent. Sometimes if it's like, hey, FHA ended up being a lot cheaper and the property's in pretty good shape, nobody's really going to have a problem with that. You just have to communicate that. You just don't want the seller to be like, "Oh, you just baited us and
Yeah,
switched it like
yeah,
conventional FHA." But
I've
sometimes
seen
it
that.
happens. So yeah, people just have to communicate.
And then for the intent to proceed, I just want to clarify because some of my clients are like, wait, we're not even past the inspection period. Why am I doing an intent to proceed? Intent to proceed is strictly lending side of the transaction of essentially, okay, we figured out what we're looking for, the product wise, the potential down
Hmm.
payment. We're ready to make the next steps with the lender. It doesn't mean we're proceeding with the transaction. If like I said, if the house is falling apart, we did
Yeah.
inspections, we can always get a release. The intent to proceed is strictly you're intending to proceed with that lender, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Think of it as like your formal loan application being submitted. Doesn't mean that you're buying the house, doesn't mean that you're locked in anything. There's no money due until the end of the process, minus your earnest money deposit, your inspection, which is separate from the lending piece, and then the appraisal. Once you know the inspection is good, we send you a payment link for the appraisal, make sure the value is good. But that's the only closing cost paid up front. So all your money is due at the very end of the process with a wire, generally to the title company. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how
Okay.
that would
No,
go.
that makes sense. So yeah, with the inspection, so now we're going on to the inspection period. Intent to proceed is done. I got it. I get it sent over to the listing agent. Inspection period. We figured out we put in the defect notice of, hey, fix these, drains, fix the gutters, repair the roof, and whatnot, to where it's we kind of have to wait for that to be done until we order the appraisal. So I know there's a lot of people that want to order the appraisal ASAP, which I usually like to wait till we're past inspections to get the appraisal ordered, unless we're doing a 21-day or less close. If it's a normal 30-day, I usually get the inspections and defect notice done, I would say within 10 days. What's appraisal turnaround right now, Graham, for you?
Probably like a couple weeks. You can, if it's a rush situation where like you beat out other offers because you can close it in 14 days, you can pay for a rush appraisal. It's not that much more expensive, maybe $150. But yeah, so that's kind of what you're looking at.
The last thing we want to do is pay for an appraisal and then we don't even get past inspections.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's exactly right. I always want to make sure the inspection, which I don't need the inspection as a lender. I just want to know that you're comfortable with it because again, I don't want you to pay for a appraisal for a house you're not buying. So
yeah. So then once we're past the defect, the inspection period, we order the appraisal. During this time as well, since we have all the information from inspections, like the age of the roof, HVAC, and whatnot, we're looking to get insurance nailed down. I usually do put insurance contingency between 14 and 21 days, but I believe the insurance part kind of goes into the loan commitment because you do have to have insurance to even get the loan. But I do like to put the insurance contingency regardless, because if it's 5 times as much as you anticipated it, you can always be like, hey, for this, I can't move forward with this property. Usually it's the same amount as the previous owner, and it's not not too crazy.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with the insurance contingency, I would say, is the older homes that have like knob and tube or something like that. Insurance companies are really cracking down on knob and tube, to the point of potentially not even getting them insured. I do know of a couple insurance brokers that can make it happen. It's just the value isn't covered as much, and it's just a lot tougher. They can charge crazy premiums because they know
way more expensive.
Allstate and State Farm aren't going to be covering that. So
yeah.
As we're waiting for the appraisal to be finished, the loan commitment I usually put at 28 days. So it's essentially just a contingency of making sure my client is able to get a loan on the property. If they're not able to get a loan on the property within that 28 days, we can get a release from contract and get that earnest money back. But it has to be within the 28 days or whatever we put for that deadline. Anything else because we're to the back end of that 30-day close. We're getting, within the next week, we're closing right now. So anything in particular that the consumer shouldn't do during a transaction, Graham? I know you can touch on that.
I
with
can.
Experience, and then what to kind of prepare for themselves for closing.
Yeah, so things not to do. This might be common knowledge or it might not, but if you are about to buy a house, especially if you're in contract, do not go get a new car loan or a new credit card opened. If your car breaks down and something needs to happen, call me, call your lender. It's very important to not add to your debt to income ratio while you're in contract, because these days the interest rate is affected by that. If you qualify in general, can be affected by that. So yeah, that's important. This is kind of like going back to the beginning, but I think a lot of people don't know what title does. So the title company, it's like the same when you buy or sell a car. They kind of like facilitate the legal side. So that's the deed. We all know that. But they also will issue you what's called title insurance. So title insurance it's not exactly like the most fun thing to talk about, but it can be handy. And so the title company runs a title search, make sure there's no liens against the property. So you can't buy the house and then 5 years later, somebody goes, the owner of this house from before you lived there owes me for windows that I installed that I never got paid on. So they'll protect you against that. And they'll also give you an insurance policy for that. So that is part of the process of timeframes. We have to get the title search back from title company. And then yeah, from there, it's you're kind of getting the loan buttoned up at that point. So you'll get your conditional loan approval, you'll get insurance set up. Jordan has great people. I have great people for that. Um, if they need an extra pay stub, if they need to verify why does your parents' address show on your credit report, just silly kind of underwriting things like that, just to kind of get everything squared away. And then we would submit for the final loan approval, which is called the clear to close. So when everybody gets the clear to close, we're like, yeah. It's a happy day. Yeah, yeah. And you guys will be like, Graham's not calling me for all my paperwork anymore. It's rocks.
He's not annoying me anymore.
Yeah, yeah. But no, and then we'll schedule closing from there. And then I think I mentioned it earlier, but your funds, for the most part, besides earnest money, inspection, and appraisal, is all due at the very end of the process to the title company with a wire, generally. Okay. And then Jordan would help you guys get your closing set up when you sign and pen.
Yeah, I get the final alta, I review it, I send it to my client with the wiring instructions to title. And then, we would be essentially good to go before closing. No, I usually like to do it the day of or the day prior. We have a final walkthrough of the property. It's essentially, I did a little video on my socials with it, but it's essentially just us making sure either the repairs have been done and they've been done correctly. If there's been no repairs, we're still looking for any type of the personal items from the seller, especially if there's occupancy upon closing. I know that sometimes there's post occupancy, but occupancy upon closing, we're making sure there's not a lot of trash or anything left from the seller, because even though the little stuff is just kind of, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not a big item, that can really add up and be a couple $1,000s to get out of your home, to where that should have been done by the seller. And there's verbiage on the contract stating that even if we close and there's still a lot of items there, it's still the seller's responsibility. But I usually like to hold off on my clients signing anything until there's at least a truck on the way over there or a truck scheduled to pick up the items. But more than happy to postpone closing if we have to, if the seller left a bunch of stuff or a bunch of trash that needs to go. So and then we're closing. We made it to closing. I know there's probably a couple things that we kind of missed. We just wanted to make this a reasonable video. Graham, anything else that you want to touch on with kind of how the transaction goes? I think you did well with touching on about everything on the lending side.
Yeah, I think on the lending side, that's pretty much it. Closing, you sign a bunch of papers in person, and then depending on when you get the occupancy, you get the keys, right, Jordan? So that's the fun part.
Get the keys with my smiling face. There you go. Yeah. Well, yeah. So thanks for listening to episode 2. Episode 3, we don't know what the heck we're going to be talking about, so we'll kind of brainstorm any other things, and let us know if there's any major questions that you might have that we can kind of create an episode on. But thanks for listening, Graham. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Oh, wait a second.